The galaxy was wide and endless, filled with countless stars and strange worlds. In this galaxy there was one rule everyone believed: the strong survive and the weak are crushed. And for most species, humans were considered weak, fragile, and unimportant. But one boy named Ethan was about to change that belief. Ethan was 16 years old, a human with dark hair and calm eyes. He was not strong like the warriors of other planets. He did not have sharp claws, wings, or glowing powers. He had only his mind, his courage, and a strange habit that confused everyone. He liked to smile. On this day, Ethan stood in front of the grand gates of Zerath Academy, the most dangerous school in the galaxy. The academy was famous for training only the deadliest students. Almost all of them were alien girls born to fight, trained to kill and raised to lead empires. No boy had ever been sent here before, and no human had ever been brave or foolish enough to walk inside. The giant silver gates opened slowly, with the sound of grinding metal. A cold wind blew out from the academy grounds. Ethan walked forward, carrying only a small bag on his shoulder. His steps were steady, his face calm, and yes, he was smiling. The alien girls standing near the entrance turned to stare. Some laughed loudly, some whispered with sharp voices. Others narrowed their glowing eyes in anger. "Is that a human?" One girl hissed, her voice like cracking glass. "He will not last a day." Another sneered, her armor shining under the twin suns. "Why is he smiling? He does not understand where he is," a tall warrior muttered, gripping the handle of her blade. Ethan heard every word, but he kept walking, his smile never fading. The inside of Zerath Academy was like a fortress. Towers rose high into the red sky. Training grounds shook with the sounds of battles. Energy weapons fired, metal clashed, and the air was thick with tension. Every corner had students sparring, practicing or preparing for war. In the middle of this chaos, Ethan walked calmly, the only human boy in a school filled with killers. The first classroom was already waiting. Rows of alien girls sat in their seats, each one more terrifying than the last. Their appearances were strange and deadly. One had sharp wings folded behind her back. Another had eyes glowing like burning stars. Another carried a spear longer than Ethan's body. When Ethan stepped inside, silence fell across the room. Then whispers spread like fire. "A boy? Impossible. A human? This is a joke. Look at his weak arms. I could break him with one finger." The teacher, an old alien warrior with scars across her face, slammed her staff on the ground. The sound echoed through the room. "Silence," she commanded. Her eyes sharp as blades, she turned to Ethan. "State your name and species." Ethan stood tall, his smile still soft but steady. "My name is Ethan. I am human." A ripple of laughter broke through the class. Some girls clutched their stomachs as they laughed. Others shook their heads in disbelief. One even pointed at Ethan and said, "He will not survive the week." But Ethan did not flinch. He simply bowed his head politely, then lifted it again with the same calm smile. The teacher's eyes narrowed. She was expecting fear, trembling, or excuses, but this boy showed none. She studied him for a long moment, then gave a thin smile of her own. "Very well, human Ethan. You will sit here, but know this. This academy will not protect you. If you are weak, you will be destroyed. If you cannot fight, you will be erased." Ethan nodded. "I understand," he said quietly. Then he walked to his seat. The whispers followed him. For the rest of the day, Ethan moved through classes filled with challenges. Survival lessons, weapon training, and brutal combat theory. The alien girls treated him like prey. Their eyes followed him, some with amusement, some with hatred, some with curiosity. During lunch, one tall alien girl blocked his path. Her armor heavy, her blade glowing. She leaned close and said in a cold voice, "Why do you smile, human? Do you not know fear?" Ethan looked up at her, his smile never shaking. "I know fear," he answered, "but fear does not control me." Her eyes narrowed, but for the first time she stepped aside, as if his answer had cut deeper than any blade. That night, Ethan lay in his new dormitory, the sounds of alien voices echoing outside. He stared at the ceiling, still smiling softly. He knew tomorrow would bring more challenges, more tests, and maybe even fights to the death. But he also knew something no one else understood yet. The Academy thought he was weak. The galaxy thought humans were powerless. But Ethan carried a weapon stronger than claws. Swords or fire. His weapon was his heart, and his strange, unbroken smile. And tomorrow, the deadliest girls in the galaxy would learn just how dangerous a human boy could be. The next morning began with fire in the sky, twin suns rising over Zerath Academy, painting the walls in red light. Alien girls were already awake. sharpening blades, testing weapons, and preparing for another day of survival. Ethan walked into the training hall with the same calm steps as before, his bag hanging loosely on his shoulder, his eyes steady, and yes, his smile still there. The alien girls whispered as he passed. Some laughed at his calm face. Others stared as if measuring how long he would last. The training hall was massive, the floor made of dark steel that could heal itself after damage. On the walls, giant screens showed combat scores and rankings. Every girl in the academy fought daily to prove her worth. And today, Ethan would be tested for the first time. The teacher, an old alien warrior with golden armor, raised her voice like thunder. Today is combat trial. No student may escape it. All will fight and all will bleed, even the human. Her eyes flicked toward Ethan. The class erupted in cruel laughter. The girls whispered, "He will be crushed in the first round. One strike and he is gone. He should not even be here." Ethan heard them all, but he only placed his bag down slowly, then stood straight, his smile soft but unbroken. The teacher's staff struck the floor. The steel shook under her power. "Pairings will be random," she said. The screen above flickered, showing names and faces, and when the first match appeared, the entire class fell silent. Ethan's name glowed beside one of the deadliest in the room. Sarika of the Bloodfang clan. Whispers filled the hall like a storm. Sarika was a warrior princess feared across 3 star systems. Her clan's blades had spilled rivers of blood. She was the pride of her people, tall, sharp-eyed, her long silver hair tied like a banner of war, her armor carved with symbols of conquest. Sarika stood slowly, her gaze cold, her aura sharp enough to cut the air. She looked down at Ethan as if he were already dust under her boots. "A human?" she said in a low, dangerous voice. "This will not be a fight. This will be a warning to the galaxy." Ethan only smiled, then stepped forward onto the steel floor of the arena. The lights brightened. The crowd of alien girls gathered around, excitement burning in their eyes. They wanted to see the human broken. The teacher raised her hand. "Begin." Sarika moved like lightning, her blade flashing in her hand. The steel floor rang with the force of her strike. But when the dust cleared, Ethan was not broken. He was standing to the side. Untouched, still smiling, the crowd gasped. Whispers spread. "He dodged? Impossible." "He is faster than he looks." Sarika's eyes narrowed, her grip on the blade tightened. She attacked again, this time faster, sharper. Deadly strikes that could split stone. But each time Ethan stepped aside at the last moment, his body moving with surprising timing. His face calm, he did not attack. He only dodged, his movements light, his smile soft, as if the deadly dance was a game. Sarika grew furious, her pride burning. No one had ever dared to smile at her during a fight. "Stop mocking me, human," she roared, her blade slicing through the air with the power of thunder. Ethan finally spoke, his voice quiet but clear. "I am not mocking you," he said, still smiling. "I respect you, so I let you go first." "Ladies first." The entire hall froze. The alien girls stared wide-eyed. No one had ever dared to speak to Sarika like that. Not even the strongest warriors, yet this human boy had said it calmly. With a smile, Sarika's blade stopped mid-air. Just for a heartbeat, her face twisted with confusion and rage. Ethan's words had cut deeper than her own weapon. The fight continued, Sarika striking harder. Ethan dodging with clever steps, but something strange was happening. The more she attacked, the more unsettled she became. Because no matter how close her blade came, no matter how much force she used, Ethan's smile never faded. The other girls began to murmur, "Why does he not fear her? Why does he keep smiling? He must know something." Then Ethan leaned close as Sarika's blade slashed the floor beside him. Sparks flying, he whispered a few quiet words, words only she could hear. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Her strike slowed, her blade trembled. It was as if Ethan had touched something hidden deep inside her, something no one else knew. Sarika stumbled back, breathing hard, her eyes burning with anger and something else. Fear. The teacher raised her staff, ending the fight before it could finish. "Enough," she commanded, her voice sharp. "The human survives the first trial." The class erupted in noise, shock, and confusion. Some girls shouted that it was unfair. Others whispered that the human had hidden strength. And a few stared at Ethan with new interest. Ethan bowed politely toward Sarika, then walked calmly off the floor. Picking up his bag, his smile still soft, still steady, Sarika stood frozen. Her blade shaking in her hand, her pride wounded. her secret touched and her mind echoing with the human boy's quiet words. The academy had expected the human to fall, but instead, he had planted doubt. And in a place where strength ruled everything, doubt was the sharpest weapon of all. The battle hall was still buzzing after the trial. Whispers spread like wildfire through Zareth Academy. The alien girls could not believe what they had seen. A human boy had faced Sarika of the Bloodfang clan and walked away untouched. For the first time in years, Sarika's pride had been shaken. She sat in silence at the far end of the hall, her silver hair falling over her eyes, her blade resting against her knee, her mind replaying the fight again and again. But what haunted her most was not Ethan's movements. It was his smile. Why had he smiled even when death was inches away? Why had he whispered those words that pierced deeper than her sword? Sarika clenched her fists. Her pride screamed that she should have destroyed him. Yet her heart whispered that something about him was different. Ethan, meanwhile, walked through the academy as if nothing had happened. The other students stared at him with new eyes, some full of hatred, some full of curiosity, and a few with silent respect. But Ethan did not react, he only kept walking, his smile never leaving his face by evening. The academy's courtyard was filled with rumors. Girls from every clan whispered about the human boy. They say he has secret powers. No, he is just lucky. He whispered something to Sarika. That is why she lost her focus. Impossible. No one can shake her pride. The whispers grew until even the teachers noticed. The human was no longer a weak joke. He had become a puzzle, and puzzles were dangerous that night. In the silence of the dormitory, Sarika could not sleep. She gripped her blade and stared at the ceiling. Ethan's smile burned in her memory. Every warrior she had ever faced trembled before her, their eyes full of fear, their voices silent. Yet this human had looked at her like an equal. Worse, like someone he pitied. I will break that smile, Sarika whispered to herself, her voice sharp as a blade. No human will make me doubt who I am. The next day, training began again. The class gathered in the strategy hall, a massive chamber where students studied tactics of war. The teacher explained complex battle plans, maps glowing in the air. While the alien girls argued fiercely over strategies, Ethan sat quietly, listening. When it was his turn to speak, the class expected silence. They thought the human had nothing to offer. But Ethan leaned forward and spoke in calm words. Your plan is strong, but it has a weakness, he said. If the enemy delays you by just 2 minutes here, your entire formation collapses. The hall went silent, the map flickered, and the weakness appeared exactly where he had pointed. The alien girls frowned, shocked that a human had seen what even they missed. Sarika's eyes narrowed, her pride wounded again. She slammed her hand on the table. Luck, she snapped. Only luck. But when Ethan turned to her with the same calm smile, the anger in her chest grew heavier. After class, Sarika could not stop herself. She stepped in front of Ethan in the courtyard, her blade at her side, her voice low but full of fire. Human, you think you are clever, you think your smile makes you strong. But I will show you what real strength is. Ethan looked up at her, his eyes calm, his lips curved in that same strange smile. Strength is more than a blade, he said softly. You will understand one day. Those words struck her like lightning. She raised her blade an inch, ready to silence him. But she stopped, because for a single heartbeat she felt her hands tremble. Why? Why would she tremble before a weak human boy? The other girls gathered, hungry for drama. Fight him, they whispered. Crush the human. Show him his place. But Ethan only bowed politely, then walked past her. His back straight, his smile steady, Sarika stood frozen, her pride breaking under the weight of his calmness. No one had ever ignored her challenge. No one had ever spoken to her without fear, yet Ethan had done both. That night, Sarika found herself in the training grounds alone, striking her blade against the air again and again, each strike filled with anger. Her mind replaying Ethan's words, his smile, his quiet strength. The more she thought of him, the more unsettled she became. For the first time in her life, Sarika felt that her blade was not enough, that maybe there was a strength she did not understand. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his dormitory, writing quietly in a small notebook. He recorded what he saw, what he learned, and what he planned. He knew Sarika's pride would not let her rest. He knew the academy would soon turn more dangerous for him. But he also knew something else. The galaxy believed humans were weak. But weakness was only what others saw. True strength was hidden inside, and sometimes a simple smile could break the pride of the deadliest warrior. As the night deepened, Sarika raised her blade for one final strike, but her hands shook again. She dropped to her knees, her silver hair falling like a curtain, her whisper breaking the silence. Why does his smile not leave my mind? And in the shadows above, another pair of eyes watched Ethan quietly. Not Sarika's, not the teacher's, but someone far more dangerous. Someone who had not yet revealed herself. The human boy's smile was beginning to change everything, and the galaxy's deadliest class had only just begun to notice. The academy did not sleep. Even at night, the towers glowed with strange lights. The halls echoed with whispers, and the air was heavy with hidden rivalries. In this place, every student carried two weapons. One was their blade, the other was their secret. Ethan had survived his first trial. He had walked away from Sarika without a single wound. But survival was not victory. Survival in Xerath Academy only painted a target on your back, and now the human boy was the center of every whisper. The alien girls spoke in corners and shadows. He embarrassed Sarika and he must be punished. No. He is clever, maybe too clever. His smile hides something. I do not trust him. Rumors twisted like snakes. Some said he carried hidden technology. Some said he had psychic tricks. Others said he was just a fool too stupid to fear death. But whatever the truth was, the girls agreed on one thing. The human was dangerous simply because he was different. Ethan walked the halls as calmly as ever. His steps quiet, his smile soft, his eyes steady. But behind that calm face, he knew the storm was building. Every glance he felt on his back. Every whisper that cut through the silence. He knew enemies were gathering. One evening after training, Ethan returned to his dormitory. The room was small, its walls cold metal, the bed stiff, but it was quiet. He placed his bag down and noticed something strange. On his bed lay a folded piece of dark paper. Ethan picked it up slowly, opening it with care. On the paper were 4 words written in sharp alien script. You should not smile tomorrow. Ethan's fingers held the paper for a long time. His eyes calm, his lips curved into a faint smile. But this time the smile was different, quieter, heavier. The next day, the academy's schedule brought the students to the survival arena, a massive field surrounded by walls of steel, the ground shifting like a machine, forests, deserts, and rivers appearing at the command of the teachers. Here the students learned to fight not only each other, but the world itself. The teacher's voice rang out. Pairs will be tested, survival for 3 hours if you fail. You do not deserve this academy. The names flashed across the screens again, and when Ethan's name appeared, the crowd murmured. His partner was not Sarika this time. It was Kaylin of the Void Fang, a girl known as the Merciless. She was feared even more than Sarika. Her black armor carried scars of past victories. Her eyes burned with cold fire. She never smiled. She never hesitated. She never forgave. Kaylin stepped forward, her voice sharp. I do not need a partner. Especially a human, she spat the word like poison. Stay out of my way, or I will cut you down myself. Ethan nodded softly, his smile calm. Understood, he said, but in his eyes there was no fear. The trial began. The ground shifted, trees rose high, the air filled with the cries of mechanical beasts. The students scattered, each pair forced to survive against traps and enemies. Kaylin moved like a shadow, her blade striking every beast that crossed her path. Her steps silent, her face cold, she fought with merciless strength. Ethan followed a few steps behind, observing, learning, not rushing to strike, only using his mind to notice patterns. At first Kaylin ignored him, but as the hours passed, she began to feel something she had never felt before. Confusion. The human did not slow her down. He did not panic, he simply moved with quiet precision, warning her before traps, pointing out hidden dangers. Once, when a giant mechanical wolf leapt from the shadows, Kaylin struck with her blade, but her strike missed its second head. Ethan threw a stone at just the right angle, distracting the beast long enough for Kaylin to finish it. She turned on him, eyes blazing. Why did you do that? She demanded. Ethan only smiled. Because you would have been hurt, he said simply. Her grip tightened on the blade, her pride burned. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had dared to suggest she needed help. Yet the human had done it without fear, without hesitation, and with that same strange smile. By the end of the trial, Kaylin and Ethan stood at the finish point, alive. Though Kaylin's pride was far from whole, the teacher announced their survival. But the whispers among the girls grew louder. He made Kaylin hesitate. He is changing them. First Sarika, now Kaylin, what is this human doing? That night, Ethan returned to his dormitory. Another paper waited on his bed, this one colder than the first. "Stop smiling or you will not wake up." He held the note in silence. His eyes calm, his lips curving again, he placed it under his notebook, then sat quietly. His hand holding a small pen, he wrote down every detail, every word, every threat outside. Shadows gathered. Some girls watched him with hatred, others with fear, and one girl, silent and hidden, watched him with a different fire in her eyes. The academy was beginning to split. Lines forming in silence, enemies sharpening their blades. And Ethan, the only human boy, stood at the center of it all, smiling as if he already knew the game was only just beginning. The academy's halls were louder than usual. News spread quickly about the human boy who had survived not just Sarika, but also a trial with Kalen of the Void Fang. The whispers grew sharper, the stares heavier. Ethan was no longer invisible, he was now a threat to balance, and that made him dangerous among the students. One name began to rise again and again, Lyra of the Iron Scars. She was known as the girl who hated mercy. Her clan taught that kindness was weakness, hesitation was death, and mercy was betrayal. From her childhood, she was trained to strike without pause. To break her enemies completely, Lyra was tall and broad-shouldered. Her scars showed proudly across her arms, each one a story of victory. Her eyes were hard steel. She had no softness, no laughter, no pity, and she despised anyone who showed weakness. When she heard of the human boy who smiled at Sarika, who dared to protect Kalen, her lips twisted into a scowl. "Mercy," she spat. "This human thinks mercy is strength. I will show him what mercy really means." The next day in the combat courtyard, the teacher announced a special duel. The screens flickered, and the names glowed bright. Ethan against Lyra. The crowd of alien girls erupted. They cheered and hissed, eager to see the fight. Many expected Ethan to finally break, because Lyra never held back. She never showed restraint. Lyra stepped onto the steel floor, her weapon a massive axe that glowed with dark energy. She slammed it against the ground. The arena shook, her voice thundered. "Human, today I break your smile. Today I carve the truth into your flesh. Mercy has no place in this galaxy." Ethan walked slowly onto the floor, calm as always, his eyes steady, his soft smile resting on his lips. He bowed politely, his voice even. "Thank you for the lesson, Lyra." The crowd laughed, mocking his words, but Lyra's eyes narrowed in fury. She charged with the force of a storm, her axe swinging down like lightning. The floor split as her weapon struck. Sparks flew, dust rose, but Ethan was already gone. Stepping aside with careful timing, his movements light, his face calm, Lyra struck again and again, each blow enough to shatter stone. Each swing shaking the arena, yet every time Ethan dodged, his body moving not with power, but with rhythm, with patience, with thought. The crowd began to murmur. Why does he not strike back? He is only dodging. Is he afraid? But Ethan was not afraid. His smile never faded, his eyes never left Lyra's. He spoke between her strikes, his voice calm. Strength is not only in destroying, strength is also in choosing when not to destroy. Lyra roared in fury. "Weak words," she screamed. "Only the strong decide who lives. And who dies." Her axe came down with a roar. Ethan moved closer instead of away, stepping just inside her strike. His hand touched the handle of her weapon for a heartbeat. His eyes looked straight into hers, and he whispered softly, "Then why do you carry scars? If you never showed mercy, why are you still haunted?" The axe froze mid-swing. Lyra's body locked, her eyes widened, her breath caught, because his words pierced something deep inside, something she never let anyone touch. The scars on her body were trophies, but the scars in her heart were chains. The arena went silent, the other girls stared in shock. Lyra of the Iron Scars, the girl who hated mercy, hesitated. Ethan stepped back slowly, his smile soft, his voice gentle. "Your scars do not make you weak, Lyra. They remind you of what mercy costs, but also of what happens when it is forgotten." Lyra's hands trembled, her axe lowered, her teeth clenched as rage and confusion battled in her chest. She wanted to crush him, to silence him, yet her blade would not move, her heart refused. The teacher's staff struck the floor, ending the duel, her voice sharp. "Enough." "The human survives again." The crowd erupted in chaos. Some shouted in anger, others whispered in awe. Ethan had not just survived Lyra's storm, he had made her stop. He had touched the untouchable. Lyra stood frozen, her breath heavy, her axe shaking in her grip. For the first time in her life, she had been forced to feel doubt, and it came not from a warrior's blade, but from a human smile. That night, Lyra sat alone in the training grounds, her axe beside her, her scars burning in her mind. She whispered into the cold air, "Why did I stop? Why could I not break him?" Her voice trembled. Her pride cracked. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his dormitory, writing quietly in his notebook again, recording the events, the patterns, the faces. He knew the academy's strongest students were not only warriors, they were hearts trapped by fear, pride, and pain. He knew his smile had begun to reach them, one by one, but outside shadows deepened. The notes left on his bed were no longer simple threats. Whispers grew darker. Enemies gathered not just among the students, but beyond the academy walls. The galaxy was watching the human boy now, and not everyone wanted him to survive. The academy had always been a place of blades and fire, but now it felt like a place of whispers and shadows. Ever since Ethan arrived, the balance of fear had begun to shift, and the galaxy outside was starting to take notice. The students still trained every morning, their weapons flashing under the twin suns, their voices sharp with rivalry. But behind every clash of steel was a question no one spoke aloud. How long will the humans survive? Ethan walked calmly as always, his notebook in his hand. His soft smile never fading. To most it looked foolish, but to some it was terrifying because the human had done something no blade ever could. He had touched the pride of the strongest girls, Sarika, Kaylin, and even Lyra. That alone made him dangerous. In the high towers of the academy, the teachers whispered among themselves. "He is not strong, yet he changes them," one said. "If the clans hear of this, they will interfere," another warned. The academy was not just a school. It was a forge, a place where the future leaders of empires were shaped, and Ethan's presence threatened that design. Far beyond the towers, messages flew across the stars. Powerful families demanded answers. Why is a human there? Why has he not been erased? Why do our daughters hesitate because of him? Back inside the academy, the air thickened with tension. Some girls began to watch Ethan with curiosity, others with anger, and a few with something more dangerous, fear. One night, as Ethan walked back to his dormitory, the shadows seemed heavier. He opened his door and found not a note this time, but a mark carved into the wall, a symbol of death used by assassins. Ethan touched the mark gently, his eyes calm, his lips still curved in that strange smile. "So it begins," he whispered softly. The next day, the trials were different. The students were thrown into a massive war simulation. The survival arena transformed into a battlefield. Glowing towers, shifting terrain, endless waves of mechanical soldiers. The students were divided into factions, forced to fight not just for survival, but for strategy. Ethan was placed in a group with Sarika, Kaylin, and Lyra. The crowd gasped at the names. The galaxy's most feared girls forced to fight alongside the human boy. The simulation began. Machines stormed the battlefield. The girls cut through them with deadly grace, Sarika's blade flashing like silver lightning, Kaylin's strikes silent and merciless, Lyra's axe crushing through steel, and Ethan the human moved quietly between them, not striking with power but pointing out traps, redirecting attacks, warning of ambushes. "Left," he said calmly, and Sarika's blade intercepted a hidden strike. "Above," he murmured, and Kaylin's dagger split a falling drone in half. "Behind," he whispered, and Lyra's axe crushed a machine before it could pierce her armor. At first the girls resisted, but slowly they began to listen, their attacks flowing with his words, their movements sharper, their coordination stronger. The human boy was not leading with strength, but with vision, and it was working. By the end of the simulation, their faction stood victorious, the battlefield littered with broken machines, the other groups defeated. The teacher announced the results with narrowed eyes. "The humans' team survives. The human changes the flow." The whispers grew louder. "He makes them fight better. He weakens them with doubt. No, he strengthens them." But outside the simulation chamber, shadows waited when the students returned to their dorms. One girl found her door marked, another found her bed torn, and Ethan found a dagger stabbed into his pillow. The message was clear: someone wanted him gone. That night, Ethan sat at his desk, his notebook open, the dagger beside it, his hand steady as he wrote. "They fear me, not for what I am, but for what I can change," he wrote. "The academy is only the surface. Beyond these walls, the galaxy is watching, and the galaxy does not want a human smile to spread." Far above, in secret chambers, alien leaders spoke in anger. "This boy will disrupt our daughters. He will disrupt our empires. Remove him," they ordered. Assassins were dispatched, hidden deals were struck. The war for Ethan's survival had already begun. Back in the academy, Sarika sat alone, polishing her blade. Kaylin sharpened her daggers in silence. Lyra traced her scars with trembling fingers. Each of them thought of the human boy who refused to break, the boy who smiled even in the face of death, and though they would not admit it, a part of them wanted to protect him. In the shadows of the academy roof, a silent girl with dark eyes watched Ethan. She had never spoken a word to him, never stepped into the light, but her gaze was sharper than any blade. She was known only as the Silent One, and unlike the others, she did not want to test him. She wanted to understand him. The academy was no longer just a place of learning. It was now a battlefield of hidden wars. Clans against clans, teachers against students, shadows against the human boy, and at the center of it all was Ethan. His notebook, his calm eyes, and his quiet, unshaken smile. The academy's towers stood tall under the cold light of the twin moons. Silence wrapped the halls, but the silence was not peace. It was the heavy silence before a storm. Whispers of assassination still lingered. Blades were being sharpened in secret, and even the teachers watched with narrowed eyes. Ethan sat at his desk, his notebook open, the dagger from the night before lying beside it. He wrote quietly, his calm smile never leaving his lips. The galaxy outside feared him. The academy inside hated him, but he knew something deeper. He was not here just to survive, he was here to teach. The next day, the academy gathered in the great hall, the largest chamber of all, filled with banners of every clan, the air thick with pride and rivalry. Today was not a normal trial. Today was the final lesson, a test that came once every generation, a challenge where the strongest revealed themselves. The teacher's voice rang like thunder. This trial will decide who leads, who falls, and who breaks. The rules are simple, one by one. You will face your greatest rival not with strength, but with truth. Her eyes swept across the crowd, finally resting on Ethan. And yes, even the human will face it, the girls murmured, confusion spreading. Not with strength. What does she mean by truth? Why include the human? The teacher struck her staff against the ground. Your rival is not the person before you. Your rival is within you. Today you face what you fear most. The hall darkened. Glowing walls shifted, and suddenly the students found themselves alone, each one trapped inside a vision of their own fear. Sarika faced the endless shadow of her clan, their voices demanding perfection, reminding her she was nothing without victory. Her blade shook in her hand, and for the first time she felt the weight of failure. Kaylin stood in darkness, surrounded by the silent corpses of enemies she had struck down, their empty eyes watching her, her merciless code crumbling under the question of whether she had ever been more than a killer. Lyra saw her scars bleed again, voices whispering that she was weak, that mercy had always lived inside her and that she hated herself for it. She screamed at the shadows, swinging her axe. But the voices did not stop, and Ethan, the human boy, stood in a small empty room, no shadows, no enemies. Only a mirror in it. He saw himself, fragile, weak, just a boy who should not have been here. The voice inside whispered, "Why do you smile when you know you are powerless?" Ethan looked at the reflection, his lips curved, his voice soft. "Because power is not only in strength, power is in hope," he whispered. The mirror cracked, and the vision shattered. One by one, the students emerged from their visions. Sarika trembling, Kaylin's hands shaking, Lyra's eyes wet with rage and confusion. The strongest girls of the galaxy, broken not by battle but by their own hidden fears. And Ethan stepped out calmly, his smile unshaken. The teacher raised her staff. "You see now," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "Strength is not only in blades, it is in hearts. And this human has shown what none of you wish to see." The girls turned their eyes to Ethan, some in anger, some in awe, some in silence. They had mocked him for his smile, hated him for his calmness, but now they could not deny it. His smile had survived where even their strongest pride had shattered. Then from the back of the hall a new voice rose, soft but sharp. The Silent One stepped forward for the first time. The girl who had watched Ethan in shadows, her eyes dark, her aura heavier than all the others. She walked until she stood before him, the hall holding its breath. She raised her hand, not with a blade, but with a question, her voice quiet yet carrying like thunder. "Human, why do you smile?" The hall froze. This was the question everyone had wanted to ask but never dared. Ethan looked at her, his calm eyes steady, his lips curving, his voice gentle, "Because a smile is hope. And hope is the only weapon the galaxy cannot kill." The Silent One's eyes widened. Her breath catching, she lowered her hand slowly, And for the first time, her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. The hall erupted. Some shouted in fury, others in disbelief, but a ripple spread through the academy like a fire. The deadliest girls in the galaxy had seen something they could not erase. The weakest creature among them had shown a strength beyond their weapons. Outside the academy walls, the clans would rage. The leaders would demand his death. Assassins would sharpen their blades, but inside these walls, a seed had been planted, a seed of doubt, of change, of hope that night as the moons rose. Ethan sat alone on the rooftop, his notebook beside him, his calm smile soft against the cold wind. The galaxy was still against him. The shadows still hunted him, but he knew now that his smile had reached them, and that was enough. Because sometimes, the greatest war was not fought with swords but with hearts, and the boy who smiled in the galaxy's deadliest class had already begun to win.